Hello, listeners. I'm your host Jayasree, and you're listening to TALRadio powered by Touch a Life Foundation. Welcome to Leadership for Life with Kyra Cavanaugh, President of 15B Wellbeing, a company dedicated towards creating learning experiences for leading corporations, workplaces, teams, groups, and individuals. Because they believe that no one should sacrifice well being for performance. In today's interview, we are going to talk about something difficult. And when I say difficult, what comes to your mind? What's more difficult than talking to people around you? Like the most biggest difficulty ever. So, we are talking about the difficulty in holding difficult conversations or maybe speaking your truth. And what do I mean by speaking your truth? Everybody has an opinion and everybody has a way they look at a situation, and it necessarily doesn't need to match. When two people are talking about one single situation, both of them might have their own ideologies, both of them might have their own truths that they hold right for them. So, we're going to talk about how we can prepare ourselves for such difficult conversations, or is it actually possible to prepare? And is it actually needed to be prepared? Let's know more about this from our very, very wonderful Kira. Without any delay, let us welcome Kira onto our show. Hello, Kira. Welcome back on Tal Radio.
Hello, Jayasree. Hello, everyone. It's so wonderful to be with you. I'm so excited to talk about this topic because it really applies to every aspect of our lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not just being professional, but even in our personal lives. And even if you have to talk to your family members, not just friends or people around you, but even if you have to talk to somebody who's extremely close to you personally as well, this is definitely helpful.
For sure, for sure.
Okay, so speaking your truth sounds like a great idea until it actually comes to doing it. That's the scary part. Now you know what you want to talk, and how can you put it across? So,
Yeah,
what can get in the way of speaking your truth?
there's so much risk, right?
Hmm.
It's so easy for us to live in our heads, to have entire conversations, to have entire relationships with other people. We can anticipate or guess what people are going to say. We can feel a lack of confidence in ourselves. Maybe you wonder if it's even okay to have the perspective or the feeling that you want to share. There can be perceived risks. What if I ruin my friendship? What if I lose my job? What if the person doesn't agree with me? What if I'm wrong? So when we think about speaking our truth, there are so many obstacles to and so many risks that we can think about in ourselves. And then there's actual risk, right? How do I speak to someone that I care so much about? How do I speak my truth to someone who's kind of stubborn or obstinate or maybe not very open? Maybe I'm more intelligent. Maybe I've done more personal growth work and I worry that the person will stop loving me, or maybe they're a very difficult, very judgmental person that I need to talk with. Maybe that person has more power. So there can be perceived risks and obstacles, and there can be like within ourselves, and then we can extend those perceptions to other people. And all of those things can keep us from actually saying what we want to say and what we really think and feel.
Wonderful. That's a that's a long list of problems out there.
It is a long list, isn't it? It's why
Yeah, it
it's so
actually
difficult.
is. And okay, so when we want to do when we want to start this kind of conversation, um, the first and foremost thing that we need is courage,
Yes,
right? Because
yes,
you do not know the consequence. Sometimes maybe I don't know. Sometimes maybe you can guess the consequence of it, but if you really know the other person really, really, really well, but then many a times you kind of stay in that vacuum. You don't really understand what might happen after you just put your word. So, how can you build that courage up? How can you get yourself ready to um, go ahead and say your point?
Yeah. So, first of all, recognize where you are right now. So it can really help to prepare by writing some things down, maybe going for a walk, maybe rehearsing or kind of processing with a friend. So what I'm going to encourage you to do first is, and we were talking about this just before we started this conversation, but the psychologists have identified this acronym called HALT. And I think this can be really valuable as a starting place for speaking your truth. So HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. Hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. So I'm going to encourage you first to think about your own state and ask yourself, am I wanting to speak my truth, what feels like my truth, but really my truth might look and feel differently if I ate something, or if I'd gotten a better night's sleep, or if I was feeling more connected to other people. So what I mean by this is not to get paranoid or to undermine what feels like your truth, but check biologically, are you in an energetic space that feels like you can be calm. You have some perspective, you understand yourself, you can breathe, you can visualize and think about this conversation with another person. So before you have the difficult conversation, get a good night's sleep. Feed yourself, take care of your physical needs, make sure that you are in a good place where you're not good like you're bad if you're not good. I don't mean it like that, but just a place where you can feel calm. And then preparing for the conversation can involve visualizing success. Really see yourself rather than all the perceptions of all the negativity that could happen from the conversation. Really envision yourself feeling powerful. Envision yourself feeling grounded. Envision the other person being open. Envision the other person wanting to support you, because then we come into the conversation energetically in a very open kind of place. Prepare yourself by asking yourself, what is it that I'm thinking? What is it that I'm feeling? And what is it that I'm sensing? And I'm going to own those. I'm not going to accuse you of those things. If I'm feeling scared, I'm not going to accuse you of being the reason that I'm scared. I'm going to own my own feelings. It may be actually, but for now, I'm just going to own, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? And then what is the impact? What is the behavior? What is the situation that's causing me to think, feel, sense what I'm sensing, right? And then what would I like to change? Now, this is critical, because when I think about the behavior that I would like the other person to change, and I really visualize and envision and ask myself, would that really help my situation? Then I can come into the conversation from a place of ownership. It's so easy for us to start the conversation and get really overwhelmed really quickly, for those scripts in our head to start going, for us to lose our courage, to lose our stamina, to lose our willingness to sit in our vulnerability and be open. So preparing can really, really help us get ready so that we can come into the conversation feeling strong and able to verbalize what's really going on. Oh, this is so hard. This can be so hard. For sure.
It actually is. It actually is. And by the way, you have explained certain, steps to gather the courage first. Even before we prepare for the conversation, the
Yeah.
first and foremost is to gather the courage, and that itself seemed in a way where a lot of self-awareness, a lot of maturity, a lot of acceptance. All of that does play a major role in building that courage up, right? I,
It
I
sure
hope I'm
does.
getting the right essence of what you said.
It absolutely does. And, we're all in a growth mode on that topic, right? Not all of us are feeling a ton of confidence. Maybe some of you who are listening have done a ton of work on this and you feel really self aware and you've gotten to the point like I have where most of the time these conversations go well, but oh my goodness, we're all in a different place on this journey and it requires a lot of practice and a willingness to sit in our own discomfort. And even those things take time. So we want to bring compassion to ourselves on this topic for sure. For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Makes wonderful sense. And now that we've gotten the courage, now that we are like, okay, fine, I am ready to do, I am courageous now. I mustered up all my courage. But I don't know what the other person's reaction will be. So, like we already spoke about it, but then again, I would like you to give us any specific tips for initiating the conversation confidently.
Yeah. So recognize your thoughts, feelings, and sensations are yours. And don't presume that the other person, even if you know them really, really well, is actually thinking and feeling the things that you're afraid that they are, right? So it's really important to clarify, well, first of all, to own our own experience. If I'm feeling fearful or I'm feeling worried, that's mine. It's not theirs, it's mine. And once it becomes mine, then I have choice and I can take action. One of the things that becomes really difficult in terms of a tip, one of the things that becomes really difficult is we can feel so overwhelmed by our emotion that we just want to kind of throw it up on the other person. Excuse my kind of gross analogy, but it's like, well, if I'm feeling bad, I want you to feel bad too. And so the way I'm going to come into this conversation is not going to be particularly helpful because my truth feels like misery. And so misery loves company. I'm going to try to make you feel miserable too. That isn't going to get us very far because now the other person is going to have their reaction and now we're not going to be terribly constructive in speaking our truth. One of another tip is really to clarify, what is it that I want to get out of this conversation? So do I want to explain where I'm coming from, and maybe you want to delegate some household chores to a roommate or a partner, then knowing that that's the outcome you're looking for, you can frame the conversation to get to that outcome. And I'll give you a model you can use in just a moment. Maybe you just want someone to listen to you. And so the conversation may feel difficult because you feel vulnerable or because you don't actually know what you want. So you can start out by saying, I'd like to have a conversation with you about this, but what I really want is for you to just listen. Or maybe you want someone's advice. And then you can start out the conversation saying, I really appreciate you talking with me. I'm looking for some advice for you on this. So I'd like to explain my situation, and then I'd love to hear your advice. You can also start out by explaining where you are. This is really difficult for me to talk about, and so I appreciate you holding space and just letting me get it out before you ask many questions. So can you see how starting the conversation by clarifying your need, your expectation, and what you're looking for can be helpful? Does that make sense, Jayasree?
It absolutely does.
Okay.
And having understood the pointers here, you have said you will get into a model that you want to explain in detail. Let's dive right into that then.
Okay. So it's I call it the SIB model. If some of you look it up online, you may see the letters in a different order. It's this model has changed my life. I use it all the time. I've taught it to thousands of people, and it really helps you as you're moving through the conversation to think. S stands for situation, I stands for impact, and B stands for behavior. So when we were talking about preparing for the conversation, you could actually write down, what is my situation? I'll give you an example in a second. And then how is the situation impacting me? That's the I, that's the second part. What is the impact? The reason impact is important is, like, let's say we're in the car or we're sitting next to each other in an office and you chew gum really, really loudly. And that's the situation. And I want to have a difficult conversation with you about the fact that the behavior, B, that I'd like for you to change is to stop chewing gum. Well, do I really have it right to ask you to stop chewing gum? So as I start to prepare for the conversation, the situation S is that you chew gum really loud. And then I, the impact is I'm annoyed. And then B, the behavior is I want you to stop. Then when you've prepared and you've written all that down, you can stop and say, is the impact really that great? Do I really have a right? Is it really that important for me to ask you to stop chewing gum? Or maybe I should just put headphones on, or maybe we just won't chew gum in the car. Or maybe there are other ways to solve it. So this SIB and preparing for this difficult conversation really can be helpful because it helps you assess, is this really as big an issue as I think it is? Now, you may not know what the behavior is that you're actually asking for or that you desire. And so when we get to the B part of the conversation toward the end, you can ask, do you have some ideas about how we might come to a good resolution on this? Or it might feel so emotionally heavy to even disclose your situation and the impact of the situation that you might need time to recover emotionally before you start talking about solving it. And so that's why framing it at the beginning to let someone know, I really just need to share this. And I'm hoping that we can have a really good dialogue about it and then maybe come back and have another conversation about how to resolve it long term. When you frame that, the recipient of the conversation starts to understand more clearly their role. So let me give you an example about how to use this model. So let's say the situation is that you are really exhausted, that's the impact, from taking on so many household chores and working outside of the home at the same time. And so you want to have a conversation with the person or people that you live with to try to get household chores to be more evenly accomplished. So the situation, you just sit down and say, I'd love to frame it so that people know what to expect. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Jayasree, maybe we could do this together. So I'd love to have a conversation with you about how we could perhaps divide up household chores more evenly, and then ask for permission. Is this a good time to have this conversation? Would you be willing to have this conversation with me? Because once you've asked the question, now it's going to help you calm to know that the person's okay. Okay, so I'll ask you the question. What would you say, Jayasree?
I'd say I'm open to the conversation.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your openness to this conversation. So let me explain the situation just a little bit more. So I know I volunteered to do the dishes and the grocery shopping and to clean on my day off of work. And I've been doing this for about a year, and I thought I was okay with it. So I own the fact that I volunteered to do all these things. And I know you've been doing some things as well. I have to be honest that I'm really starting to feel overwhelmed by all of these tasks that I've taken on. And so I just wanted to see what your perspective was on the situation. So before you answer, I just want to reinforce this is a conversation we want to get into. Sometimes when we're really nervous or feeling kind of scared, we'll just talk, and we want to pause and give the other person an opportunity to share their perspective. So, do you want to play along? What would you say in response to my question about what the situation is for you? And we're just making this up as we go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, my answer to your question would be, of course, we sure can rediscuss on what we would want to do. And on every week, maybe we can have a plan scheduled. Maybe we can discuss on where you're feeling hard or where it is getting difficult for you to manage the challenges or the chores that you've been doing so far. So, why not take it one step ahead? Let's talk about each job that you're doing for the household, and let's see where we can get things straight.
Oh my goodness. Is anyone else getting like, just calm and chill? Like, oh my gosh, I have a housemate that's willing to talk about these things. So when I am willing to be vulnerable and ask you rather than just talking all the way through, did anyone else feel that? I feel so relaxed. And so I would say, thank you. Like, let's acknowledge, right, in the conversation, thank you so much for your willingness to be open because, and now I'm going to move into the impact, because I was so nervous about having this conversation. I've been losing sleep over having the conversation, and I feel really guilty about the fact that I can't keep taking on all of these tasks because I want to be doing my part in our living space. And so I just really, I feel so much better being able to talk to you about it. Can you understand my feelings of guilt and kind of fear to bring it up?
I sure can understand, but I really think that was not necessary. You could have just said a word about it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So I appreciate your openness to talking about how we might be able to move forward. And so then that's the third phase, which is behaviors. So then from here, we would just brainstorm different ideas, talk openly about what might be possible. So you can see why having thought about this and preparing in advance is really valuable, because the person you're talking with might be ready to solve. And if you haven't really kind of thought about what your needs are and what would be valuable to you, you might feel a little bit caught off guard. And you can always say, thank you so much. This is a great start to the conversation. How about we meet up again in 2 days and we can talk about actual solutions? So hopefully that gives you an idea about how to have this conversation using situation, impact, and behavior. Thanks so much for playing along.
It was wonderful. And I actually realized it's a lot simpler than how we usually think about difficult conversations. It's a lot simpler because, yeah, maybe we might have chosen a simpler example, and there could be a lot more difficult decision-making conversations to be made, especially when you're in the leadership roles. It's inevitable that you have to make real difficult decisions, and you also need to put your point across so that the other people who are who are responsible for the decision also get the idea behind it and accept the decision. So I really love the fact that the model that you explained, the situation, impact, and behavior, this can so beautifully fit into any situation that we are in. Not just, when you are in a life and death decision making, conversation. This could be a conversation as simple as the one we just had, something that we can talk it out and, settle within ourselves, stuff like that. So I really enjoyed this conversation with you, Kyra. I really loved that part.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And you can also flip it around and ask them as questions. Go ahead.
Yes. That's exactly what I have in my head. So Now that we have understood this pattern of the situation impact and the behavior model, we are trying to prepare ourselves. With the previous conversation we had, we also agreed upon that visualizing success holds extremely, a great value here. We started the conversation in the same manner where we said, you might not always know the consequence, you might not always know the other person's opinion or the thought they might have on what you are going to say, um, etc. But again, you have also emphasized in saying that visualizing success is extremely important. So would you like to elaborate a bit on that as well?
Sure, give yourself and the other person the benefit of the doubt and recognize that sometimes it's going to take more than one conversation. And as much as we prepare, sometimes, and we visualize our success, we might have an emotion pop up, and that's okay. You might visualize this conversation going really smoothly and not realize that there's a lot of emotion behind it for you. And so you might start crying. Whatever happens, it doesn't have to go step by step with what you've visualized. But as long as we visualize being compassionate, being open, giving the other person the benefit of the doubt, giving ourselves the benefit of the doubt, the more open we're going to be to the experience. And remember, you can always start and stop at your pace and your speed. You might think you're ready for the conversation. You start the conversation, you visualize success, and then you realize, oh shoot, I forgot one of the steps, or oh my goodness, this person's coming at me and it's not at all what I expected. Honor and respect yourself and recognize you get to start and stop. You are your own person. You get to start and stop this conversation as many times as you want. Visualizing success brings down the barriers that can create defensiveness, can create emotions and showing up in ways that are not necessarily constructive. So as much as we want to prepare for the conversation by writing things down, also just visualize, smile into your own strength, your own power. Imagine the other person being a co-creator in this beautiful life that you want, and continue to work at it. Relationships and speaking your truth and building confidence and sitting in your vulnerability takes so much practice. So start with lower risk kinds of conversations, and you'll become better and better at it so that you can start to have the really big conversations that maybe you've been putting off. And you can do it. I know you can.
Yep, everybody can. Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Kira. It was extremely wonderful talking to you today and also taking part in this beautiful activity that we have just achieved. Try to show our listeners on how they can benefit with the SIB model. And I really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you so much for teaching us so much.
Thank you so much. It was really fun. Pleasure to be with you all today.
Wonderful. So, to summarize for all of our listeners, so these are the 3 steps that you need to master, practice, and master. The first is to prepare yourself with all the tips and tricks that Kira has explained. And the next is to visualize your success. And the last is to use the SIB model. So, make sure you follow this strategy and be sure no conversation is difficult anymore. So wonderful. And that was Kyra Cavanaugh for all of you today. And you're listening to TALRadio powered by Touch a Life Foundation. This is your host, Jayasree, signing off for today. Stay tuned and keep learning.